Under the pale light of dawn in Poznan, Poland, the silhouettes of American soldiers can still be seen near the vast military compounds, a familiar sight since the buildup of US forces along NATO's eastern flank in 2022. But this week, that presence is beginning to shift. The United States has informed its allies that it will reduce its military footprint in Eastern Europe, a move described by NATO as an adjustment, not a retreat. Romania's Ministry of Defence confirmed the news on Wednesday, emphasising that the measure would affect several NATO member states, including Bulgaria, Slovakia and Hungary. The tone in Bucharest was calm, prepared even. Officials made it clear that this step was anticipated under President Donald Trump's revised defence posture announced earlier this year. The Romanian Defence Minister, Ionuț Moșteanu, explained it in careful terms. It is important to emphasise that this is not a withdrawal of American forces, but rather the end of the rotation of a brigade that had units in several NATO states, including Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia and Hungary. His words are meant to reassure, both domestically and abroad, that Washington's commitment to European security remains intact. Roughly 1,000 American soldiers will remain in Romania, tasked with deterring potential threats and maintaining readiness. Romanian officials stress that no strategic capabilities are being removed. The US still maintains air defense systems, intelligence sharing facilities, and joint training operations that form part of NATO's forward defense posture. Scenes from earlier deployments remind us how visible and symbolic this presence has been. In 2022, American soldiers marched toward the Arłamów base in southeastern Poland, a moment captured by AFP cameras as the US flag waved from their sleeves. Convoys of armoured vehicles rolled through the Romanian countryside. Helicopters circled above fields near Râmnicu Vâlcea, and the distant hum of engines echoed across highways leading toward NATO logistics hubs. Those visuals became part of Europe's new defence reality, one born of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and solidified by Washington's promise to protect its allies. Now, 3 years later, the shift comes at a delicate moment. The war in Ukraine continues, though largely stabilised along entrenched front lines. European governments are watching closely to ensure that this US adjustment does not signal a broader strategic pullback. Inside NATO headquarters, officials emphasise continuity. A senior alliance source told reporters that the White House had informed them in advance and that the alliance remains confident in Washington's commitment. The source described the change as a logistical rotation, part of a cycle that began under previous rotations of American armoured brigades. Still, for many in Eastern Europe, US boots on the ground are more than symbolic. They are psychological reassurance. Since 2022, Poland has hosted over 10,000 American troops at any given time. Romania, Bulgaria and the Baltics each have smaller but strategically vital contingents. These forces man radar installations, operate Patriot batteries and lead joint drills with European partners. At the port of Vlissingen in the Netherlands, where US armoured vehicles have been offloaded in vast numbers since the early stages of the build-up, the imagery is unmistakable. Tanks, trucks and Humvees lined up in perfect formation, their arrival once representing deterrence, their gradual departure now perhaps transition. Drone footage from 2023 shows American equipment being unloaded, ready to head east. This machinery formed the logistical backbone of NATO's deterrence structure, the visible proof of a united Western military front. But even as Washington scales back, the message from officials is consistent. This is about rebalancing, not retreating. Romania's defence ministry has reiterated that US strategic assets, intelligence coordination, aerial patrol coverage and cyber defence nodes will remain fully operational. In other words, the core of the alliance's deterrence remains untouched. Behind closed doors, analysts see this as part of a broader US reallocation, aligning with new priorities identified by President Trump's administration. Those priorities include strengthening domestic readiness and reallocating certain global deployments to areas seen as higher priority, such as the Indo-Pacific and the Caribbean, where US naval operations have intensified. The tone of this adjustment is markedly different from the drawdowns of past decades. In this case, it is being conducted with careful coordination, avoiding the impression of sudden disengagement. Unlike the abrupt withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, this move is structured, communicated, and cooperative. For NATO, that distinction matters. In Eastern Europe, local governments are responding with composure. In Warsaw, the Polish Defense Ministry has refrained from public criticism, acknowledging that the US garrison inaugurated in Poznan in 2023, the first permanent American military base in Poland, will remain fully operational. That garrison, a symbol of long-term US commitment, stands as a physical reminder that the United States is not leaving, but recalibrating. During the opening ceremony 2 years ago, US Ambassador to Poland, Mark Brzezinski, stood among Polish and American soldiers, calling the base a milestone in the alliance's history. Behind him, the stars and stripes flew alongside the Polish flag, a moment that now takes on renewed meaning. It represents continuity amid change. Back in Bucharest, Moșteanu's remarks have been interpreted as a signal of confidence rather than concern. He insists that Romania's defence posture remains strong, bolstered by cooperation not only with the US, but also with European partners. Since 2022, Romania has hosted joint air patrols with France, Italy and Spain, while modernising its own defence systems. Throughout history, changes in US troop deployments have carried both strategic and symbolic weight. From Germany after the Cold War to Iraq and Afghanistan in the 2000s, each adjustment has signalled not just military planning, but shifts in global focus. The reduction in Eastern Europe fits within that pattern, an evolution rather than a rupture. In Brussels, NATO officials continue to emphasise cooperation. The alliance's integrated command structure ensures that forces can be rapidly deployed if necessary. Exercises like Defender Europe and Steadfast Defender have reinforced that capability. Even with fewer American boots on the ground, the logistical and technological backbone remains firmly transatlantic. Ultimately, the story unfolding in Eastern Europe is not one of departure, but of transition from an emergency posture to a sustainable deterrence model. In that sense, today's news reflects both the durability of NATO's alliance and the adaptability of American policy. The soldiers departing Poland, Slovakia and Romania are not leaving behind a void, but a network strengthened by years of cooperation. As the sun sets over the fields of Poznan, 2 helicopters cross the horizon, the same scene that opened this chapter of European security nearly 4 years ago. The flags still fly, the partnerships endure, and the message remains steady. The defence of Europe is evolving, not ending. The recalibration marks a new phase, one defined less by presence and more by permanence, less by numbers and more by strategy. For now, both Washington and its allies appear confident that this balance can hold. But as history shows, the real test of deterrence is not in the number of troops on the ground, but in the trust between those who stand together.